I am interviewing Kaylie Smith today. She is the writer of Enchantra and Phantasma, and I will give her the opportunity to quickly just introduce herself.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I am an author from Louisiana and I write mostly gothic or dark fantasy and romance books. And I genuinely do nothing but that and spend all my time at home with my cats. So every time someone's like, introduce yourself, I'm like, those are the most interesting things about me, genuinely.
I would love for like my sole purpose and my sole job to be writing. One day that
Yeah.
is the goal.
I
Okay.
mean, yeah, a dream for sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions that I'm sure my readers are super excited to learn about because my reader base is obviously they're fantasy readers, but they're also fantasy writers. So a lot of the questions that I'm going to ask are craft related. So the first question that I have is when you're creating a new main character, what are the first questions that you ask yourself about them before you start writing?
The biggest thing to start a novel in general for me is why is this person the right person to tell this story? I think that is the most important thing to ask. So I think characters and world and plot all kind of happen simultaneously in my process because the world informs the character, right? Like we are a product of the place we were raised and how we were raised. And so I think it's sort of I get an inkling of a character or an inkling of a plot, and I start to sort of interweave those together to see if that character is right to tell the story that the plot is developing. And sometimes I've had it to where the main character has shifted and become a side character, and other times the story and plot have shifted because of the main character. So it kind of happens differently every single time, but I think that is by far the most important thing when developing a character is why is their voice and like the personal stakes that they have the right fit for that story.
I love that. Amazing. Yeah, because I know there's a lot of advice out there where they're saying, interview your character kind of, and they have like these interview questions that you can ask your character. So I was wondering, do you ever use any of those things once you have an idea
I
of who your characters are?
I definitely like I mean I sit down and I do character sheets. I think it's more of a background thing because characters even like down to their favorite color or like their favorite food is fully informed by how they were raised, the people they were raised by, and the world they were raised in. So I have full in-depth things that of like full of details that will never actually make it to the book page. But yeah, I think that's sort of the process for everyone, but I think it naturally develops with the world building. So, like when I was writing Phantasma, Ophelia's OCD, for example, I knew that that was going to be a big part of her character from the get-go, but like how she felt about it and how everyone felt about it around her really had to do with the time period she was living in and the words they had to describe that. So it's sort of like something that unraveled as the book went on and I continued to write her character. And all the way down to like Blackwell's favorite book being Frankenstein. Just those little things that come up and you realize like the world that they're living in, like what is culturally relevant to them in that moment in time. So yeah.
I love that. Okay, and so since you mentioned Ophelia and her OCD, so I'm just gonna jump to the question that I have about that.
Yeah.
So I know that you've also mentioned it before that you have struggled with OCD, so you know like the workings of it. And I wanted to mention also that I also struggle with OCD. So reading that in a fantasy book, it was cool to see like my
Yeah.
struggles on paper. Yeah, I just wanted to know how did you approach writing that inner voice on the page?
I think when I realized that the story I was telling had this sort of psychological horror aspect to it, going into this place where you really don't know what is or isn't real, you don't know if like you're following your heart or your brain to survive, I realized that it was a perfect opportunity to have a character like Ophelia tell that story because she lives with that every day already. Like the sort of horrors of her own mind, never knowing what's truly her and what's truly the shadow voice, her OCD. And so I was so excited to finally have something that I could put that experience on page that worked so well with the book and the themes that I already had started plotting. And genuinely, I think sometimes people, I get this question a lot, and they're like, I know it's a personal question, but they're like, was it hard to do? And I just find that so interesting because I've looked at it so long, my whole entire life, that it's personal, but not in a way that's painful. Like it truly was just me writing down my point blank lived experience. And then when we were going through and editing it, my editor, who was absolutely incredible and knew what I was trying to achieve, we wanted to make sure we didn't trim it down too much. But for a storytelling aspect of it, there were so many things that we did actually have to take out just for pacing and to make sure the book was still readable. But it's like the amount of symptoms we have with OCD, probably like 40% more than I even showed on page. And I think it's funny because some people are like, oh, she hits us over the head with it. But I'm like, but that's the experience
That's what it
every
is.
single day. Like that's, and I like, if you feel that exasperation, that's great to me because that means I did my job. And yeah, it was really just sitting down and being like, this is my everyday lived experience. And it was really cathartic. Like I genuinely had such a good time because it's so second nature. I mean, that's just my brain. It's not something I like wish other people to have. It's definitely a hard disorder to navigate, especially I think it's not taken very seriously. And I'm also very much like Ophelia. I'm not trying to fix anything. So I just really want to everything to come from a place of like, here is my experience. Like I want to share that with people. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Do your characters ever surprise you mid-draft and force the story to change directions? And if so, like, how do you decide when to follow them versus when to rein them in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Genevieve listened to one thing on the outline the entire time I was writing that book. I think Ophelia, it's also like a character thing. Ophelia's very by the rules, rigid. Phantasma was so easy for me to write because she was just like, this is where we're going. And it was so lovely. And then Enchantra, I ended up doing a major rewrite just because I had such a gut feeling. And Genevieve was being so stubborn about her character art. And it's hard to explain, I guess, to people who maybe don't have that creative side that it's not like they're directly talking to me. I'm not sitting here conversing with these characters. But I feel like the deeper you get into something that maybe isn't right in a book, it's like the characters, it's the way they're responding becomes out of character. And I definitely had that with Enchantra. That book was rough. And I was like, oh, Demonica will be so much easier. And now this book is trying to kill me too. So
So Phantasma was the easiest, and
yeah,
two after that, yeah.
oh, by far. I don't know if I'll ever write a book as easy as Phantasma again. Maybe like there's like a secret project I'm writing as well that I'm really excited about. And that one's really easy because it's so different and there's like no stakes in me for it. But I think the deeper you get into a series, the more expectations, like I think people are a little shocked that maybe they liked Enchantra as much or maybe even more than Phantasma because I think people always expect if they love a first book, it's going to get worse. I think that's a reader experience. I think we've all had a disappointing follow-up, right? Like that's just like when you read so much, it's inevitable. And obviously I'm as a reader first, I am very conscious of that. So I just wanted to make sure when I put out Enchantra, it was the best I could possibly do. And now that pressure is carrying on to Demonica, and I feel like, yeah, because now everyone's like, oh my God, I love Seven. He's my favorite. And I'm like, great. I hope it's so good. It's sort of that. I think there's like a lot of aspects about how books change as
Yeah.
you're drafting them. And sometimes it really is just the characters being stubborn, and sometimes it's just like the sheer pressure to get something right or nail your vision that you have for a project. So
Yeah, for sure. And I actually, you were saying like when you read the first one and then you sometimes you're disappointed by the sequels. I love both equally, Phantasma and Enchantra. I love
I
them both.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So my next question, it touches more on like magic systems. So in Phantasma, you know, Ophelia uses necromancy. How did you develop that magic system and how early did you define its rules and consequences? Or did you just do it all as you were writing?
I'm an outliner and I like to really plan because I think that shapes every decision that gets made. So I like to create magic systems that have hard rules with loopholes. And I knew specifically for this world that I wanted to do that, especially with devils and their trickery and bargains. So, like, careful wording is one of my favorite things to use in a magic system. So I knew when I decided that it was going to be in New Orleans. We were going to do necromancy. I grew up around New Orleans, so it's the magic there is so deeply rooted in our culture. I'm Cajun, my whole family's Cajun. Speak Cajun French, learn all about voodoo and hoodoo and very rich culture that comes with the magic of New Orleans that I feel like people know, but like maybe you don't know the intricacies
No,
of
yeah.
when you're not like from there and you're not just like hearing it constantly. And there's a lot of superstition specifically and mortals who practice magic to prepare not getting stuck in any bad situations. And I've always found that so fascinating, like the bit with Ophelia sewing her mother's eyes shut, like not just for creepy effect, but a genuine practice people believe, or like keeping silver over a grave so their like spirit can't escape or go someplace bad. Just those little bits of things that came from where I grew up in my own culture. And it was just so, so fun to integrate and then sort of build the magic system around that. So I had that pretty figured out because I knew the end of Phantasma and I also knew the next books, like where we were going. So I knew I had to start rooting rules from the beginning that might not get utilized until book like 4 or 5, but we had to start kind of developing as we go. And I think the beauty of interconnected standalones is that you get to burst the world open with every installment, right? We really learned about mortal paranormal magic with Ophelia, and we started getting into a little bit more of like the true immortal side in Enchantra, and then into Monica, like we're fully in hell.
But that's so interesting that you were saying like, because I mean, I don't know the history of New Orleans. I'm also like Canadian, so I really don't know the history
Yeah.
of New Orleans.
Right.
But that's so interesting that you were able to like take the history and your background and use that in the books. That's awesome that you get to do that. Okay, so my next question, from a craft perspective, I know we touched on plotting a little bit already, but how much do you actually plot before drafting? And are there any tools like beat sheets or even Notion that you used to outline your stuff?
I mean, I use Save the Cat to start because I feel like it's just a very classic place to go, and it also allows for room to change. But I will say I am a heavy outliner. I like to have all of my chapters bullet outlined. So when I'm truly drafting, like on this deadline, I'm like chapter 10, bullet with a paragraph of what I have to accomplish, fully write, check off chapter 11, and just keep going. I truly think the best work is done for me when I outline, because I feel like when you can trace your thoughts and like you see where thoughts came from, it's so much easier to make sure your through lines in a book, all your themes, all those tiny little plot points that don't seem important but end up being important. I think it's the best way to keep track of them, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, kudos to the pantsers who can just wing
Yeah.
it. I don't know how that's possible. And you know, a lot of people say if you follow an outline or if you go too deep into like the chapter by chapter thing, like you lose the creativity or the fun. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it'd be awful if I like wrote the entire thing and winged it, and then there's all these plot holes, and then I would have to start over. I feel like that would burst my creativity bubble and just depress me, and then I wouldn't be able to move on from that.
Yeah, it's that way of being like, oh, you can't be creative and structured. And
true.
I mean, yeah, I disagree with that as well. And I will say it's like so interesting because I can almost always tell when a book is written without an outline, like
Ooh.
almost always. And that's not a bad
Bad thing, yeah.
thing, but it's like I can immediately tell. And I think for some books, I'm like, yes, this needed to be like discovery written. This works so well for the flow of the book, the voice of the book. It makes so much sense. And then for others, I'm like, I think if it had been more structured, I see the ideas that they were trying to do, but they weren't like linear or organized in a way that works for the text. And so that's also to me why a good writer is a good reader, and why reading while you write is so important, because I think seeing those things as a creative is like, okay, this is what I really like about this and why I like it, and this is something I don't like and why I dislike it. And I think that is so important for your own craft.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I've started doing when I'm reading fantasy books, I have like my notes app open sometimes and I'm like, oh, I like this, or oh, I don't like this, and this is not what I'm doing. This is what I'm it's awesome. Okay, so my next question. So this is more like a romantasy focused question. So when you're writing romantasy, obviously like the romance and the fantasy usually play equal parts when done
Mhm.
properly. But how do you make sure that both are working together on the page instead of competing with each other?
Yeah, I think to be honest, for me, it's like making the romance a plot point. Phantasma couldn't really happen if they were just allowed to fall in love, mostly because I think it would have just been lust. I mean, like it was. I know the sort of vibe they had that instant connection for a reason, which we find out at the end of Phantasma, and we'll eventually go back to and explore more later. But I think if it's like making that romantic aspect forbidden worked hand in hand with the plot because it was really important for Ophelia to break a rule. That was so important for her character arc and also like finding Blackwell and his identity and what he was going through and then shifting to Enchantra, the marriage of convenience aspect, like that romantic trope went hand in hand with the plot. She had to marry him in order to survive this game. And so I feel like anchoring that together is really important specifically in this series because it gives the romance as much of a stake as the life or death games do. But I think we get into marketing trends, right? We're all sort of at the whim of publishing and the general public. And so I think it's sort of like, oh, romantasy has to be half and half. That's what it is. But then everyone argues about the actual definition of romantasy and what books actually fall under those branches. Like, for example, I genuinely say Wicked Games is more paranormal
Yeah.
fantasy romance than romantasy. I think it depends who you talk. I don't mind it being shelved in romantasy at all, but I think it kind of depends who you talk to and their history with the paranormal genre. And so I think for me, just looking at each book and being like, what actually serves this? Is it more romance or is it more of the fantasy adventure aspect? And the ratios are different every time for every book I write.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I recently made a release a video of what I think the difference is between romantasy and fantasy with romance. And I also was discussing the fact that some people put like a negative connotation to the romantasy genre. And I'm like, what? Why?
It's marketing that's gone wrong, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. It's marketing that went really right and now is being synonymous with what people think is like slop or like fast fashion, which is obviously not fair at all.
No.
But I think this is like the issue when you're selling a product, right? Versus when you're creating something. Because I think the vision that we all start with as authors, like how we'd sell it, wouldn't ever be uniform. But the whole that we're doing here to make sure we have a job is like, how do we get this to readers or make things sound appealing? And like everything else, like slang and whatever, things go out of fashion.
Yeah.
So it's like romantasy is really, really hot. And now people are like rolling their eyes at it. And it's not fair to the authors or the books. But I think that's sort of why it's like for me, I sort of let the marketing publishing side, they're very good at their jobs. Well, they're mostly very good at their
They're
jobs.
mostly very
It depends what experience you have. My Wiki Games publishers, I love so much, and I feel like they really nail it and have found my audience, which is incredible. And the way they talk about it, though, is still different than the way I talk about my books because directly selling the product that I know inside and out will always be more effective, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In some spaces, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
when I'm on Instagram, you will never see me call a book that is not true enemies to lovers, enemies to lovers. You
Yeah.
just won't.
Yeah.
And I think that might work for the general population, like in a Walmart blurb and a Barnes and Noble blurb. But like when we're talking about people that are in my direct audience with me, I know that they'll trust if I say it is this, they'll be
Yeah.
like, okay, it is. I always say, if you're confused by a book's marketing, go actually look at how the author is talking about the book.
That is a good tip. Okay, so the next question was, it's a fun one. So what does a typical writing day look like for you when you're drafting? Do you have any routines or non-negotiables that help you stay consistent?
Yeah, I mean, when it's just like I'm drafting and working on a new project, I have like time. It's really just getting up in the morning. I, do my normal house chores, make breakfast, and then kind of sit in my office and write for a few hours, usually until maybe 2 in the afternoon. I try to write 2,500 words a day, non-negotiable on just like regular days. And that's all good. I'm really good friends with Adeline Grace, and we'll go write together. We'll try to have like a routine, get out of the house.
Do you go to cafes maybe, or where
Yeah.
else do you go? Okay.
Yeah, it's like we'll go to a cafe or like a Panera, or we'll go to different bookstores. We'll go do actual activities and talk things out, because I feel like it's important to watch movies and read and like experience outside when you're kind of in that drafting phase. When I'm on deadline, which I am right now, it's pretty much like 5,000 to 10,000 words a day that I'm doing.
wow.
Yeah, this is a deadline. I'm very late with this book. And it's just been a really hard book. Last year was a lot. And so this deadline, I've done so many rewrites because I'm really trying to get to a vision that is editable to my final vision, if that makes sense. I want to make sure the first draft, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to be moldable into like my actual vision for the book. And so it's gone through a lot of rewrites because I'm getting closer and closer to what I'm really hoping this book is going to be. And so it's genuinely waking up at like 8 a.m., nothing but writing. I don't even answer my emails. Like my assistant is answering my emails, checking with my agent. And then hopefully I will turn this in. So it's like me and Dr. Pepper, and my husband like slides food under my prison door. And that's it. I usually have music on, but yeah, I'm cuffed to this desk. And the only time I like get a break is when I get to do things like that. So you're like the first human being that isn't like my husband or my assistant that I've talked to, and like,
Whoa. Yay. Again, thank you so much for actually.
Oh no. Yeah, no, thank you. Because I was like, a good excuse to like stop
to not write
yeah.
for a little bit. And I was gonna say, like you were saying, you listen to music while you're writing. Is there anything in particular that you listen to?
I usually create full playlist, but like very specific vibe sound bites that I'm trying to achieve with the mood. So I have a Demonica playlist. It's public. And I just, it's like it's kind of dark and very sexy. Like that's like blood, very much the vibe, because Seven drinks blood. So a lot of that going on. And when I'm in a space where I can't do music with lyrics, I put on Lo-Fi Girl. She never fails me. I love her. It's for anyone who doesn't know what Lo-Fi Girl is, it's basically a YouTube channel that is live 24/7. And it's this cutie little girl, like it's an animation. She's like working in her desk with her cat, and it's just lo-fi music 24/7. It's
I
so
love
nice.
those types of videos. They're so awesome. There's some other ones that I found. They're specifically for fantasy writing sessions, and you're in this like tavern, or it's like a walk through the woods, and I'm like, oh.
it's so nice because it's just like that, or like, and I'm not kidding, I just need like peace when I'm writing if I'm not listening directly to the playlist I've made. So it's like either that or House Moving Castle. I'm not kidding. I literally put that movie on loop. So like for Enchantra, I was watching it 6 times a day while I was writing. Yeah, because it's I know every inch of that movie backwards, forwards, and it's so peaceful and calming and lovely. And so I just have it on and I write, and it feels like a friend is just chilling with me while I work. So
that's so cute. You know what else that you can do? I mean, if you want, but I bought a projector, and I project like these cute, cozy library or like cute fireplace things. Like I project that in front of me, and then I write, and it's awesome.
Yeah, we have a projector, and because sometimes we do movie nights outside, and that's a great use for that. I'll think about that. Yeah, like a crackling fire.
Exactly. Or sometimes I find like these cozy castle vibes, and it's like a nice like stone fireplace. And
yes.
I wish this was my home. But okay, so I think I had one more question. Oh no, I have 2 more. Okay, one of them was, how long does it normally take you to finish a draft? So I know with Demonica, it's taking a long time, but
a year and a half. God, Demonica, it's taking me so long. Phantasma poured out of me. I think that was 8 weeks, maybe. Maybe. Yeah, the easiest book I ever wrote. My YA book I wrote. I like started when I was like 16. And didn't have the draft that would go on to get me an agent until I was 25. So it's like I was writing other things in between, but I wasn't committing to anything. Like I always knew I wanted to be an author. I was going to do it, but I had to get footing in like an actual life first. So, went to college, started that career just to have something to fund my time while I wrote my first novel. And then everything slowed down in COVID. And I mean, very unfortunate circumstance, but it did give me the time to sit down and finally commit to just writing the book. And then the sequel to that was like a couple of months. And then the third one took me about 8 months.
Wow.
No, it was a very hard book for me to write. That's a whole thing. But while I was writing that third book, I mean, like, fantastic. It was so easy. I was like, oh, it would be so nice if every book could just be written like this.
Yeah.
And then Enchantra, I would say for 4 or 5 months. I did a major rewrite for that last minute too. That one was really hard. And then Demonica's taking me forever. But I'm crossing all of my fingers that the next project I'm working on is a little more smooth than this one. I think it's just also the reality, like, I published in a 10-month span 3 books. So like I had the finale of my YA trilogy, Phantasma and Enchantra, all came out within 10 months. And Phantasma and Enchantra specifically were 7 months apart. And so for my career and for my readers, like I'd like to get them things as fast as possible. But I don't think that was healthy. And I think I'm still like the burnout, like the domino effect that can have.
You're still feeling it.
Yeah. And also no one can possibly prepare you for having a book that takes off. It's so mind-blowing still, because it's only like, when I think about it, Phantasma's less than 2 years old. It's like only a year and 4 months old.
Yeah.
And my whole entire life changed, every aspect of it. And so dealing with that and still having to write books,
It's a lot.
like no one can prepare you for it. Yeah. I'm hoping this year, after Demonica is done, I can regroup and get back to a regular schedule.
Yeah. And yeah, so when you're saying like that Phantasma only took 8 weeks, first of all, amazing. That's crazy. I've been
Who was she?
I've been drafting my stuff for months and months. So when you get your draft down, is it you just writing and not really going back to edit as you write? Like how
I
didn't get 8 weeks?
no, I edit as I write fully.
Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes I can't tell if it's just a nature thing. Like I like to turn in a clean draft. I think it's a lot easier for me to cut and rewrite something that has not even good bones, like really good bones.
Okay.
Than it is to have to do rewrites at the 11th hour. It was sort of what happened with Enchantra. I didn't like that at all, which is why I'm taking extra extensions on Demonica, because I'm like, I really want to make sure this is the vision to start with. So I've done so many rewrites now, and I'm finally like, okay, this is the book. Like we're there. But that just takes creative time and going back and again, constantly rewriting as I'm going through this draft. And Phantasma, I did the same thing too, but it was just, I just knew what that book needed to be and was going to be. It's something I felt was like culminating my whole life. The second I had all the pieces like planned, everything kind of clicked, and it was just so easy to get through. Like it just
pour it all out.
Every experience with all of these books is different. I think sometimes as creatives, we're so hard on ourselves because it's like, I'm taking too long, or no one's waiting. You're fine. You like, it's your vision, your name's gonna be on it. Take the time you need. I also think it's okay to just get it done.
Yeah.
And worry about it later.
Yeah.
Like, I think the first book is the hardest because you're teaching yourself how to write a book.
Yeah.
And then when you finally realize that you can, in fact, complete a manuscript, then it's like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
6 books later, and then sitting here like, I can't believe I wrote all of those words.
Yeah. When I first started writing, I was constantly going back and editing, and then, but like at one point I'm like, Rita, you need to move on. You need to just write, and then you'll go back and you'll edit later and just get it on the page. But yeah, like everybody's experience is different.
Yeah. I think that can happen for 2 reasons though. I think some point you can over edit. At some point you need to like cut it off and be like, enough. Yeah. I know that's only going to get better when I have an entire manuscript at once to develop.
Yeah.
Nitpicking about certain things. Eventually you have to just tell yourself enough.
Yeah.
I also think sometimes maybe that happens when there are plot points that you're worried aren't working. So
Yeah.
then it's like you have to go back to your outline. Because that happens to me when I feel directionless. It's usually because I'm like, the plot's not working. So I keep going back and changing my mind at how I want to start it, how I want to get into it, because like I haven't actually decided on all the details. And that's when I sit myself down. It's like, enough. You have to outline. You have to
Yes.
decide, no matter whilst writing this outline, if you hate it, you still have to write it. And yeah,
Yeah.
it works. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the last question that I have is, looking back, what is one piece of writing advice that you wish you could give yourself when you first started writing?
Hmm. I think the number one thing you learn when you decide to make art for public consumption, you learn it very quickly. Other people's opinions or how they interpret something is just not up to you.
Yeah.
You have to let it go. And I think it's a canon event that every new baby author, their first book is out in the world, and those things sting so hard. And you slowly realize that maybe even what they're saying is right, which means you didn't write a perfect book your first time, like, God forbid.
Yeah.
And and I think I wish I could just go back and be like, it is not the end of the world if your first book is not good and not a hit. I honestly, my career blew up way earlier than almost every author I know. I'm very grateful. So fortunate to be in that position. But most authors I know that make it big, it's 10 to 20 to 30 books in.
Yes.
And you just don't know about their backlist because you didn't know them before the book that made it big. And so I had such a hard time that my YA didn't spring me into stardom. And it's such a ridiculous pressure to put on yourself, because I think it hurts to think that you worked so hard on something and you spent so much time on something that no one will actually ever read.
Yeah.
But now I've sold over 1 million copies of the Wicked Games series, and I'm like, so what if no one reads that first series? I actually don't think they should.
And it probably helped you, though. It helped
Yeah,
you like be the
I
writer
needed-
that you are today.
Yeah, I needed to write those books. I'm glad I wrote those books. I love those books. Those books are not my best work.
And
And yeah, that's they were my first books. I don't know a single author who thinks their first book is their best work.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. So I think that is my number one piece of advice. Also, when you are writing a book, you need to raise your main character's personal stakes. Period. I actually think Alexandra Bracken talked about this recently. I love her. This is as a piece of advice like she got in her career, and it's so funny because I think we all just come up to this like person eventually in our career who passes this advice along, and we keep passing it. But it's true. It's when you look at a book, it does not matter how life or death the plot stakes are. We need to care about the character stakes first and foremost. You need to make sure you tie those two things together and amp it up to like 1,000. Like that to me is the best way to get people into a book. So yeah.
That is excellent advice that I will use. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna check if like the stakes are high enough for the protagonist.
It's like when we know and love our protagonist, so it's like, well, of course the stakes
Of
are
course
high.
they care. Of course people care about her.
Yeah, but it's like no one cares about your character or your book like you do. So you have to go in there and be like, why does it matter that this person is doing this quest to them personally? Like, what is on the line for them? Because then it could literally be anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Kaylie, I am so happy that I got to chat with you. This was amazing, amazing for me, and it's going to be amazing for my readers as well, I'm sure.
I had a wonderful time as well. Like, I love these conversations so much, especially when people care about craft. It's like, I get to talk about the nerdy part of our job. So I appreciate you having me so much. This was so fun.
Thank you so, so much for taking the time, Kaylie.
Of course.